Okay, picture this. You sit down to study, you read a paragraph, it makes sense. You read it again, still makes sense. You feel good, you feel ready. You close your notes, walk away, and 2 hours later, gone. Completely gone. Like your brain just hit delete and moved on with its life. And the worst part? You knew it. You read it 5 times. You highlighted it in 3 different colors. You even rewrote it in your notes, and still, nothing. If that sounds familiar, I want you to stop blaming yourself right now. Because this isn't about intelligence. This isn't about having a bad memory or not being a school person. The real problem is that nobody ever taught you how memory actually works. And once you understand that, once you see the actual mechanics behind it, studying changes completely. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how your brain builds memories, why everything you've been doing is probably working against you, and the specific techniques that will make information stick. Not just for the exam, but for weeks. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Why your brain discretes information. Here's something that sounds harsh, but is actually really freeing. Your brain is designed to forget almost everything. From a survival standpoint, your brain's #1 job isn't to help you pass your chemistry exam. It's to keep you alive and focused on what matters. So it runs this constant filter in the background asking, is this information important enough to keep? And if you're just passively reading something without signaling that it matters, the brain's answer is almost always no. Think about it this way. Your brain processes something like 11 million bits of information per second, but your conscious mind can only handle about 40 to 50 of those bits. So the brain is constantly making decisions about what to keep and what to throw out. Forgetting isn't a flaw. It's a feature. The problem is that most study methods never convince the brain that your biology notes are worth keeping. And that's exactly the trap of passive studying. Rereading your notes, watching lecture videos on 1.5x speed, highlighting everything in sight. These feel productive. They feel like learning. But all they're doing is creating familiarity, not memory. You recognize the information when you see it, but you can't actually recall it on your own. And on an exam, nobody's going to hand you your highlighted textbook. The shift you need to make is this. Memorization gets dramatically easier when you stop trying to push information in and start forcing your brain to pull it out. That's what this video is about. Chapter 2. Memory is reconstruction. Most people treat their brain like a computer hard drive. You read something, you save it, later you retrieve it. Simple, right? Wrong. That's not how memory works at all. Memory isn't storage. Memory is reconstruction. Every single time you remember something, your brain is literally rebuilding that memory from scratch, pulling together fragments, filling in gaps, reconstructing the experience. And here's the crucial part. The brain strengthens a memory not when it receives the information, but when it retrieves it. Read that again. The act of remembering is what builds the memory, not the act of reading. This is why a technique called active recall is probably the most well-researched, consistently proven study method in all of cognitive psychology. And yet almost nobody uses it properly. Here's what the average student does. Reads a page of notes, thinks, yeah, I get this, and moves on. Here's what top performers do. Reads a page of notes, closes the notes, and then tries to retrieve everything they just read from memory. No peeking. Sounds simple, but try it right now with something you just read, and you'll immediately feel the difference. It's uncomfortable. Your brain strains. You feel like you're failing. That struggle? That's literally the point. When your brain has to work to retrieve something, even if you only get 20% of it right, it sends an urgent signal. This information is hard to access. We need to reinforce the pathway. It's like cutting a trail through a forest. The first time you walk through, it's overgrown and slow. Walk it 10 times and it becomes a clear path. Every retrieval attempt is you walking that trail again. The difficulty isn't a sign that it's not working. The difficulty is the mechanism. So instead of rereading your notes for the 4th time tonight, close them. Grab a blank piece of paper. Write down everything you can remember. The messy, incomplete, half-remembered attempt is worth 10 times more than reading the perfect version again. Chapter 3. Your brain hates isolated facts. Quick question. Why can you remember every word to a song you haven't heard in 8 years? But you can't remember what you studied for 45 minutes yesterday. It's not random, it's pattern recognition. Your brain is an absolute machine at storing connected information, emotional experiences, and patterns. But isolated, random facts with no context or relationship to anything else, they disappear almost immediately. This is why rote memorization, just repeating a fact over and over in isolation, is one of the least effective study strategies. Your brain doesn't organize information alphabetically or by subject. It organizes it by connection and meaning. So the fix is to stop trying to memorize raw facts and start turning them into relationships. Here's an example. If you're studying biology and you need to remember that ATP is the energy currency of the cell, don't just repeat ATP, energy currency, ATP, energy currency. Instead, connect it. ATP is basically your cell's battery pack. Every time your cell needs to do something, move, divide, make a protein, it drains a little bit of the battery. Now you've given that fact a hook. You've attached it to something your brain already has a file for. The more ridiculous, visual, or dramatic you make the connection, the better it works. Your brain is not a robot. It's associative, emotional, and wired to respond to things that feel significant. Which brings me to the memory superpower that almost nobody talks about: emotion. Emotion is essentially your brain's way of bookmarking something as important. Think about the last time something genuinely funny happened, or something scared you, or you felt a real rush of excitement. You probably remember it clearly. Now think about the last time you read a textbook while also checking your phone. Blurry, right? When there's no emotion attached to what you're studying, your brain files it under probably not that important. So here's a weird but effective trick. Manufacture the emotion. Study with urgency. Set a 20-minute timer and treat it like a race. Say the concept out loud in a dramatic voice. Visualize yourself actually using this knowledge in the future. It sounds ridiculous, but it works because you're giving your brain a reason to pay attention. Shallow attention creates shallow memory. Deep attention, even for a shorter time, creates memories that actually last. Chapter 4. The illegal study techniques. All right, let's get into the actual methods. These are the ones that feel weirdly too simple, but the research behind them is overwhelming. The blurting method, this one is so effective it almost feels like cheating. Here's how it works. Step 1. Study normally for 20 to 30 minutes. Read your notes, engage with the material, do your thing. Step 2. Close everything. Notes, textbook, laptop, all of it. Grab a blank sheet of paper. Step 3. Write down everything you remember. And I mean everything. Concepts, diagrams, keywords, random facts, whatever comes out. Don't worry about structure. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about getting it wrong. Just dump everything your brain has onto the page. Step 4. Open your notes back up and compare. Find what you missed. Find what you got wrong. Correct it in a different color so you can see the gaps clearly. Now here's why this works so well. Your brain has a powerful response to mistakes. When you think you know something and then discover you had it wrong, or you notice a gap you didn't realize was there, your brain flags that information as high priority. The corrected version sticks dramatically faster than if you'd just read it correctly the first time. The act of blurting is uncomfortable because you're constantly confronting what you don't actually know. But that discomfort is the whole point. You're converting passive familiarity into real, retrievable memory. Try it after your next study session. 20 minutes of studying, then a blank page. You will be shocked at how much is missing, and even more shocked at how quickly it fills in after just a few rounds. Interleaving, controlled switching. Now, let's talk about how you structure your study sessions, because this one goes against basically everything you've been told. Most students study in blocks. 4 hours of math, then 4 hours of biology. One subject at a time, fully completed before moving to the next. It feels efficient, it feels organized. But research consistently shows it's one of the worst ways to build long-term learning. The better approach is called interleaving, switching between subjects in shorter intervals. So instead of 4 hours of math, you do 45 minutes of math, then 45 minutes of biology, then back to math, then maybe some history, and so on. Here's why this works. When you switch subjects, your brain can't just stay in autopilot. It has to actively re-engage, reload the context, and ask itself, what kind of problem is this? What strategy do I need here? That moment of re-engagement, even though it feels slightly inefficient, is actually doing serious cognitive work. It's training your brain to recognize patterns and apply strategies flexibly, not just in the comfortable groove of one subject. The block method feels better because it's easier. And easier usually means your brain isn't working hard enough to actually learn. So the next time you sit down for a long study session, break it up. Mix your subjects. Let it feel a little chaotic. That slight friction is your brain doing exactly what it needs to do. Chapter 5. When and how you study matters as much as what you study. The 24-hour memory rule. Here's something that should genuinely alarm you. Without any review, your memory of new information drops aggressively within the first 24 hours. We're talking potentially 50 to 70% gone by the next morning. The solution isn't to study longer. The solution is to review smarter, specifically, to review the information just before you're about to forget it. This is the principle behind spaced repetition. The basic schedule looks something like this. You learn something today, you review it tomorrow, you review it again on day 4, then day 7, then day 14. Each time you review it at the edge of forgetting, you rebuild the memory slightly stronger than before. Over time, the gaps between reviews can get longer and longer because the memory has become genuinely durable. Compare this to cramming, studying everything the night before an exam. Cramming works for the exam. You probably know this. But it vanishes almost completely within a week because you never gave your brain the spaced repetition it needed to move that information into long-term storage. Spaced repetition takes the same amount of information and makes it stick for months instead of days. And the total time spent reviewing is often less than cramming, because you're working with how memory actually consolidates, not against it. Protect your focus window. Here's a harsh truth. If you're studying while scrolling Instagram, texting, or watching something in the background, you're not just studying less effectively, you're actively training your brain to associate that material with distraction. The brain learns the context of studying, not just the content. So if your context is fragmented attention, that's what gets encoded. You end up with shallow, fragile memories that fall apart under exam pressure. The research points to something around the first 25 minutes of a study session as being especially critical. If you can protect that window, phone in another room, notifications off, single task only, the depth of encoding that happens in those 25 minutes will outperform an hour of distracted studying. You don't need more time, you need better attention. Sleep is not optional, last one, and I know this sounds like a wellness cliche, but the science is actually wild. Your brain does not finalize memories while you're awake. It finalizes them during deep sleep. This is when the brain physically consolidates what you learned, moving it from short-term to long-term storage, clearing out the irrelevant stuff, and reinforcing the neural pathways for what matters. This is why all-nighters feel like they work in the moment but fall apart in the exam room. You learn the material. But without the sleep, your brain never got the chance to lock it in. Studying right before bed and then sleeping is actually one of the most effective sequences you can use. You're feeding your brain the content, then giving it the exact window it needs to process and store it. Chapter 6. The final piece you are not bad at memorizing. Your brain is not broken. The modern student is just absolutely buried in passive information. Lectures, videos, notes, summaries, and almost none of it is being processed in a way that creates real memory. The brain needs to retrieve, not just receive. It needs connection, not just repetition. It needs spaced reinforcement, not last-minute cramming. And it needs sleep, real attention, and a little productive struggle to do what it was actually designed to do. Stop measuring your studying by how many hours you put in or how many pages you highlighted. Start measuring it by what you can recall and explain 3 days later without looking at your notes. That's the real test. That's what you're actually building toward. Once you start training your brain this way, active recall, blurting, interleaving, spaced repetition, protecting your focus, studying starts to feel almost unfair. Not because you got smarter overnight, but because you finally stopped fighting your brain and started working with it. So here's your assignment for today. Pick one thing you need to learn, study it for 20 minutes, then close everything and blurt. Just try it once, see what happens. And if you do, drop your results in the comments. I genuinely want to hear how it goes.